Okay, so the last thing that I want to have a look at for Unit 2 for our key questions predictions for 2025 is really, really important. It's entrepreneurship. In that video where I looked at the key trends around the ABQ for Unit 2, I pointed out that entrepreneurship hasn't come up for the Unit 2 rotation of the ABQ since 2010. So definitely one to be well prepared for, and it actually hasn't come up as part of a long question since 2022. It hasn't, remember that question 5, first question in part B of the long questions is usually on Unit 2/3. It might be all Unit 3 this year because they're going to use a bit of Unit 2 for the ABQ and it's only a small unit, but hasn't featured there since 2022 anyway, so it's just due to be asked regardless of the ABQ. So if you're looking in the notes there, you'll see that information at the top of the page. So it hasn't featured since 2010 in the ABQ, so it could easily make up that Unit 2 part, or it could be part of question 5. Potential, it could be a short question, yeah. But yeah, question 5 or the ABQ more likely. There are 3 things that you need to know in relation to entrepreneurship. Be very tight in the definition. So the first part of the definition is an employee within a business, and we'll show you that in a second. You need to know how a business can promote entrepreneurship, and you need to know the benefits to a business of entrepreneurship. So 3 things there. So looking at our keyword grid here then, so remember, best thing to do with this is to really use the fact that you're watching a video, replicate these grids. If you can print off the next page where they're kind of done out for you, great. Fill them out as we go, or get a piece of paper, get a mini whiteboard and try and write out a similar layout and fill out the key terms as we go. And then what I'd be trying to do is write and rewrite the headings and the keywords associated with those headings until they become second nature to me, until they're committed to memory. Then go and tackle the exam question, which is in the next page of the notes, and do it against the clock. Then come back, watch the rest of the video where I go through the market scheme, right? So let's have a look at our keywords then. So here, the first thing to point out is our definition. So the first part of the definition here for intrapreneurship is that it's an employee within a business. It's not somebody, it's not a person. It is somebody who already works for a business. That's the important part. It is what it's all about. So it's an employee within a business, and they engage in entrepreneurial activity for that business. So it's an employee within a business. They engage in entrepreneurial activity for that business. They come up with new products or processes. That would be an example. And something else you can tag on, they need freedom and resources to do so. By resources, we're talking about human and capital resources. So it's when an employee within a business engages in entrepreneurial activity for that business. They come up with new products and processes, and the employee needs freedom and resources, both human and capital, to do so. So that's the first thing, that's the definition. So you need to be tight on that one, because if it does come up in the ABQ, it could easily be one of those ones where the first part of it is explain entrepreneurship. And remember, with the ABQ, the only time you don't need a link from the text is when you're giving a definition or explanation of a term, right? So you could see it there, and then part 2 could be benefits or methods to promote entrepreneurship. So the benefits of entrepreneurship are pretty straightforward. So it can lead to increased sales. So obviously new products or services get developed. That's the whole point of entrepreneurship. It's coming up with new ways of doing things, or new processes, or new products, or changes to something. And a keyword that I really like here is this word viability. It helps to maintain the viability of the business. So it helps to sustain the business into the future, because you're constantly coming up with new things to keep the business going, right? And keep growing and expanding the business. It leads to reduced costs. I suppose it depends on what the form of entrepreneurship is, but if it's a, an employee comes up with a new way of producing the product or of making production more efficient, well then that will lead to reduced costs. So it can lead to production being streamlined, might lead to reduced waste and greater productivity. So maybe the form of entrepreneurship is that an employee comes up with a more efficient way of producing the product, and that leads to reduced waste, better use of raw materials. And it leads to increased motivation. So this is really, the first 2 are obviously more related to business finances, while this third one is more from the point of view of the employee. Their job satisfaction increases when they feel that their input is valued. This next point has been in the marketing scheme in the past. There's a nurturing of in-house talent, and it leads to greater innovation. So in-house talent is nurtured, ideas are listened to, and that leads to a more innovative work environment. You get improved industrial relations, and that saves time and money because there's no strikes. no time lost with production stoppages because people aren't at work because of strikes or whatever it is. So job satisfaction increases, employees feel their input is valued, there's a nurturing of in-house talent by the business, and that leads to greater innovation there. There's improved industrial relations, and it saves time and money. So those methods then to promote entrepreneurship is the next thing. Well, business needs to provide its employees with adequate resources if they're to engage in entrepreneurship. So they need to provide funding for research and development. So we're talking about financial resources there. And they will need materials and time to pursue new ideas. So Google famously, I think, gave employees 20% to work on projects. So they were giving time to work on their ideas. Teamwork is the next one. And good thing to throw in here is to mention a matrix structure. So remember, from Unit 3, the two main work structures are functional and matrix. Functional is where employees are organised into different departments based on the roles they perform. A matrix structure is a team-based structure. It is across different departments, and it is based around project work. After the project is finished, they go back to their department. So with a matrix structure, it is cross-departmental. Employees are put in teams and working on a project. So with a matrix structure where you've got employees in teams, so matrix structure where you've got this cross-departmental team, it leads to greater brainstorming and shared ideas and responsibility. So that leads to greater entrepreneurship because it's more creative. You'll see this link between teamwork and creativity time and time again throughout the course. So like we're looking here at methods to promote entrepreneurship, and the market scheme is telling us I'll mention teamwork because that leads to greater creativity. You could be dealing with a question from Unit 4 that'll ask what are the benefits of putting employees into teams, and the answer to that is greater creativity because of brainstorming. You could be dealing with a question from Unit 3 that'll ask you about the benefits of matrix organizational structure. Benefits, entrepreneurship, because employees are in teams. So that link between matrix structure, teamwork, creativity, it's evident time and time again throughout the course, right? Next thing the business can do is create a culture for enterprise. So really what we're saying here is it's okay, we're creating a culture where employees feel it's safe to submit ideas, even if they're not great ones or even if they fail, right? So they want to empower employees by giving them power and responsibility, and create a culture where it's okay to make mistakes with new ideas. And then the last thing the business can do is obviously offer incentives. So they can offer financial rewards. Anytime you're going to say in an answer that business should offer rewards, or you're mentioning rewards, go that little bit further, show your knowledge of the course and actually name some financial rewards, knowledge from Unit 4. So you could say offer bonuses, share ownership schemes. That's showing knowledge of your financial rewards. So they can offer incentives such as financial rewards, they can offer bonuses or share ownership schemes, which will motivate employees to come up with ideas to improve the business. So you have your keyword grids on the next page. Practice writing out those headings and the keywords. Come down then to the next page. You got a 20-mark question, so divide by 2.5. You got 8 minutes to do it. Practice this one against the clock. So explain using an example the term entrepreneurship and illustrate 2 benefits of entrepreneurship for a business. Jumping out at me there is that verb illustrate, so making sure that you get an example into part 2 there, even though it's not asked for. Okay, so let's go down and have a look here at the marking scheme. So with the marking scheme on the next page, you can see that this was a 20-mark question. For part 1 there was chunky 8 marks going for explaining using an example the term entrepreneurship. So 8 marks were broken down like so. So 3 marks for your first sentence of keyword info, 2 marks for your next sentence of keyword info, and then 3 marks for your example of intrapreneurship, right? So the first thing here, an employee within a business who engages in entrepreneurial activity. So that would be good enough for that first bank of 3 marks there. You don't need to have all that writing that's there in the marking scheme. So I've just highlighted the key things. So saying it's an employee within a business who engages in entrepreneurial activity, 3 marks. They come up with new ways of reducing costs or ideas for new products. That would have been good enough for 2 marks. Or you could have also said entrepreneurs need the freedom and resources, both human and capital, to pursue their ideas. That line there also would have been good enough for that second point of development in the 2 marks, right? So then the last thing is to come up with an example. So a worker at Google came up with the idea for Gmail. That is an example of entrepreneurship. 3 marks, and it's 8 out of 8 there. That leaves us with 12 marks then for part 2 of the question. So part 2 of the question, remember, was illustrate 2 benefits of, so box the verb, illustrate 2 benefits of intrapreneurship for a business. So here you have to state the benefit, explain the benefit for another 2 marks, and then you have to have that example. So state, explain, example, 2, 2, 2. So if you're down here and let's say we're looking at the benefits here, and what I really like about these good headings that answer the question, we're not just saying sales, increase sales, because new products or markets are identified. Remember, your heading has to answer the question. It's not a title, it is a statement. So increase sales, new products or markets are identified. That'd be good enough for 2 marks. Then develop for a further 2 marks. Intrapreneurship results in new product services being developed. New product and market development is important to ensure the continued viability of all businesses. So that's that language that I really like. 2 marks there for the development, and then an example. An employee at Sony came up with a new idea for a games console which will become known as the PlayStation. This increased Sony's sales and profits. So linking it back to the overall point there at the end, which is nice. So 2 marks for the example. So that's 6 marks for point 1 there. And then another one needed. So you could say reduce cost because improved efficiencies or greater productivity. 2 marks for that, and then develop it for 2 marks. Various ideas result in greater productivity. Many new ideas and cost-cutting measures introduced result in greater profitability in the business. And new ideas and cost-cutting measures due to entrepreneurship lead to greater profitability. Example, an employee at Cadbury's came up with a packaging improvement that reduced costs in some way. 2 marks for that example. And then finally, you could have said increase staff morale and increase motivation. And this is this whole thing of the staff feel more motivated because their input is valued. Talent in-house is nurtured, and it leads to a greater innovative work environment. So more enjoyable workplace. There's a nurturing of in-house talent to promote innovations. 2 marks for heading, 2 marks for the development, and then 2 marks for your example. Facebook is one of the world's top employees. They encourage entrepreneurship. Employee developed the idea for the like button on their comments there. So you didn't need all 3, you only needed 2 there, only needed 2. If you look at the next page, we have another one. So you can pause the video and go and do this one now. 20 marker, another 8 minutes. You'll see you're given an intro blurb. Remember, anytime, right, that you see a question that starts off with one of these things, so a little intro piece, there'll be a little alarm bell going off in my head that it's generally this style of question where they drop the business name into the question, which means you need to drop the business name into your answer. And if you do not do so, you will lose out on some marks, right? So if we look here, we have intro piece. Educa Print is a business publishing school books in Ireland. John O'Leary, the production manager, suggested introducing some of its traditional print books in ebook format. He wanted to tap into the improvements in broadband speed and the major developments in mobile devices. The ebooks were launched onto the market in 2013 with great success. Educa Print operated a matrix org structure for the development of the ebook products. So again, part 1, same as previous, we have explained that term, intrapreneurship, and part 2, outline the methods of promoting entrepreneurship in Educa Print Limited. So this is the bit that jumps out to me. There we have it. They have thrown the business name into the question, so you need to refer to them in your answer there. So give yourself 8 minutes now, go and do the question, come back and watch the rest of the video where I go through the market scheme for this question. So looking at that marketing scheme on page 137, right, for the first part of it, we won't have a look at it because it's the exact same as previous. So the previous question, the first part was explaining entrepreneurship. It's the same here. There's less marks this time. It's just 6 marks, 4 marks for your first bit of info, 2 marks for your next point of development. So we're seeing this consistency throughout business questions. Every time a term is fed to you in the question and it says, look, explain this to me. The marketing scheme is always broken down 2 sentences of keyword info. So say one thing that you know about it, then say the next thing, right? And it's never more. So the previous question, you need to give an example, and that's why it was worth more marks, but it wasn't another point of keyword info. It's just an example, right? So then part 2 is the methods to promote entrepreneurship. So 6 marks for part 1. That means we got 14 marks for part 2. You had to come up with 2 methods to promote entrepreneurship. They're 7 marks each. State the method, explain the method, and then the crucial link to Educa Print Limited. So you have to do that in both points. So state for 4 marks, explain for 2 marks, link it to the business in the question for that remaining mark. So many students out there in the country will just totally forget to do that. That little bit of attention to detail so often separates H1 students from the rest. So create a culture for enterprise. So that is the first method. So that would be good enough for 4 marks there. Then 2 marks for developing that. So having a business that allows mistake and encourages employees to take some risks in decision making. That will be good enough for the 2 marks of development. Then you have to link it to a Duca print. John O'Leary, who is the entrepreneur there, could reassure staff that no ideas for ebooks will be discarded, dismissed, as they may lead to better ideas after. That's the remaining mark. 7 out of 7 there for point 1. So 1 more needed. There's 2 you could give. You could say they could reward staff or use teamwork. You don't need both. You only need 1. So let's say you go for reward staff. 4 marks for identifying the method. Develop that. Incentivize employee creativity or innovation with bonuses, incentives. So share ownership schemes I'd mentioned there. Or pay increases. That would be good keyword use. Throwing in share ownership schemes. So you're getting 2 marks for your development there. John O'Leary could offer share options for staff or bonuses based on the sales of any new ebook ideas. Nice link to the business. 1 mark there. 7 marks for that second point, and you're 14 out of 14 and 20 out of 20 for the question overall. So being able to interpret the marking scheme, it means that you can economize in your answer. You're not wasting time. You're not overwriting. You're just hitting the key points, and you can move on to the next question.